The global political stage and the intersecting worlds of power technology and public perception have been exceptionally dynamic this past week, revealing a complex tapestry of international relations, high-stakes personal feuds, and critical domestic initiatives. From the shifting sands of global confidence in U.S. leadership to the volatile interactions between political titans and tech moguls, and even the local administrative efforts addressing fundamental digital access, recent events underscore the multifaceted challenges and ongoing transformations shaping our contemporary landscape. A recent NPR report highlighted a significant concern regarding the perception of U.S. global leadership, indicating that majorities in key U.S. allies harbor no confidence in President Trump's command on the international stage. This sentiment resonates with a notable exchange that occurred on the eve of the 81st anniversary of D-Day, when German Chancellor Merz visited the White House. Merz, in a poignant moment that underscored the historical bonds and present challenges, reminded the U.S. president that D-Day marked the liberation of my country from Nazi dictatorship, adding, "We know what we owe you." This powerful statement, made in the context of Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine, was a clear appeal for continued U.S. engagement, with Merz asserting that the U.S. president is the key person in the world who can really do that now by putting pressure on Russia. The president's initial comparison of the Ukraine conflict to two young children fighting like crazy starkly contrasted with Merz's emphasis on the war's devastating human cost and the clear aggressor. This diplomatic encounter vividly illustrates the delicate balance of alliances and the imperative for aligned strategies in the face of escalating global crises. Particularly as the president has recently suggested a growing impatience with Putin and even called Ukraine's drone attacks badass. Beyond the realm of international diplomacy, the often intertwined worlds of politics and technology witnessed a dramatic public reconciliation this week. Following an acrimonious public feud, tech billionaire Elon Musk issued a late-night apology to President Trump, admitting that some of his social media posts had went too far. The spat, which saw Musk accuse the Republican of being unable to win the 2024 election without his help, and even suggesting presidential responsibility for preventing the release of Jeffrey Epstein files, reached a fever pitch last Thursday. Trump, for his part, had previously labeled Musk as suffering from Trump derangement syndrome and threatened to revoke federal government contracts for Musk's companies. However, in a surprising turn, the president responded positively to Musk's apology, stating, "I thought it was very nice that he did that, though he remained non-committal about fully burying the hatchet." This high-profile dispute, which involved intervention from White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and Vice President J.D. Vance, highlights the intricate and often volatile relationships between powerful political figures and influential tech industry leaders, underscoring how personal dynamics can play out on a very public and digitally amplified stage. Adding another layer to the narrative of public figures and their activities, Donald Trump Jr. was recently spotted deer hunting on Lanai, the Hawaiian island mostly owned by tech entrepreneur Larry Ellison. The island, known for its high density of free-ranging axis deer, served as the backdrop for a two-day hunt that reportedly fetched thousands of dollars at a Dallas Safari Club auction. This excursion, organized by a hunting outfitter co-founded by a former Navy SEAL and a retired FBI agent, prominently featured Trump Jr., an avid hunter and publisher of the outdoor adventure brand Field Ethos. While the former president's eldest son, who was reportedly stirring speculation for a 2028 presidential run, engaged in this leisure activity, the broader Hawaiian political landscape saw its own significant developments. Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke, stepping in as acting governor during Governor Green's travels, signed her first pieces of legislation into law. Notably, House Bill 934 Act 201 establishes Hawaii U.S. State Broadband Office and funds digital navigators to address the state's persistent digital divide, where nearly 1 in 10 residents lack home internet connectivity. Luke also signed House Bill 1052 Act 102, which aims to provide free telecommunications access to time-sensitive information for individuals with print disabilities, demonstrating a clear focus on digital inclusion and accessibility. Meanwhile, the state continues to battle the invasive coconut rhinoceros beetle on Oahu, launching a new campaign to create a barrier of treated palms with insecticide, a critical environmental effort. Leadership transitions were also announced within the University of Hawaii system and the Hawaii Community Foundation, signaling shifts in key institutional governance. These disparate events, from the global diplomatic dance and the public squaring off of political and tech titans to the more localized efforts in governance and environmental management, collectively paint a picture of a world in constant flux. The challenges of international perception, the complexities of high-profile personal relationships, and the persistent efforts to bridge societal divides and protect natural resources all underscore the ongoing evolution of leadership technologies' pervasive influence and the continuous push for progress in an increasingly interconnected and transparent world. As these narratives unfold, they will undoubtedly continue to shape public discourse, policy decisions, and the very fabric of our societies. The past week has delivered a potent reminder of the interwoven threads of high-stakes politics, corporate power, and global economics as a public feud between two of the world's most recognizable figures unfolded alongside seismic shifts in international trade policy. From a dramatic reconciliation attempt between President Donald Trump and tech titan Elon Musk to the administration's imminent assertive moves on global tariffs, the events underscore a volatile landscape where personal dynamics and economic strategy converge with far-reaching implications. The highly publicized spat between President Trump and Elon Musk, which saw the Tesla and SpaceX CEO launch a series of sharp social media criticisms last Thursday, appears to be nearing an uneasy truce. Musk, 53, had publicly assailed the president, claiming Trump wouldn't have won the 2024 election without his assistance, and controversially suggesting the president was involved in preventing the release of files concerning convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein due to past associations. The intensity of these attacks, which included a post about the Epstein files that Musk later deleted, prompted a late-night apology from the billionaire. "I regret some of my posts about President at Real Donald Trump last week. They went too far," Musk wrote on Tuesday. President Trump, who had initially responded by labeling Musk crazy and accusing him of Trump derangement syndrome while also threatening to revoke federal government contracts for Musk's companies, expressed a measured acceptance of the apology. In a brief phone conversation Wednesday morning, the president told the Post, "I thought it was very nice that he did that, though he stopped short of fully burying the hatchet." This cooling of tensions follows behind-the-scenes efforts by Trump's allies, including a phone call on Friday between Vice President J.D. Vance, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and Musk, aimed at mending the strained relationship. Despite earlier expressing disappointment over Musk's criticism of the Big Beautiful Bill, Trump indicated he has no hard feelings, suggesting a potential path to reconciliation, albeit one contingent on his broader focus of getting this country back to a level higher than it's ever been. While the political drama captivated headlines, the administration was simultaneously signaling aggressive moves on the global trade front, promising to unilaterally set new tariff rates within weeks. President Trump stated Wednesday that letters would be sent to trading partners in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, to countries, telling them what the deal is, adopting a take it or leave it stance. This declaration comes as a 90-day pause on some of the administration's most punishing duties is set to expire on July 9. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent indicated to Congress that an extension of this pause is highly likely for the 18 key trading partners negotiating in good faith, suggesting a nuanced approach to the looming deadline. A significant development emerged from London, where the U.S. and China agreed on a framework and implementation plan to ease tariff and trade tensions after 2 days of intense negotiations. President Trump heralded the deal as done pending final sign-off from himself and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Key concessions include China's commitment to supply full magnets and any necessary rare earths. Though subsequent reports clarified this loosening of restrictions on rare earth mineral exports would only last for a 6-month period, potentially offering China continued leverage. In return, the U.S. will allow Chinese students in U.S. colleges and ease export controls, particularly on critical technologies like semiconductors. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick underscored the positive trajectory, stating, "We're in a great place with China," and confidently asserting that current U.S. tariff levels on Chinese imports totaling 55%, comprising pre-existing duties, fentanyl tariffs, and 10% Liberation Day tariffs, would not change again. However, the ripple effects of the administration's tariff policies have been profoundly felt across the global economy. The World Bank on Tuesday slashed its global growth forecast for 2025 by 0.4 percentage points to 2.3%, citing high tariffs and uncertainty as a significant headwind for nearly all economies. Data from May revealed a precipitous 28.5% year-over-year drop in U.S. ocean container imports from China, contributing to an overall 7.2% annual decline in U.S. seaborne imports, the sharpest fall since the pandemic. Britain's exports to the U.S. experienced their biggest monthly fall since records began in 1997 in April, following the onset of Trump's global trade war. Industries from automotive to fashion have felt the squeeze, with India's Maruti Suzuki cutting near-term EV production targets by two-thirds due to rare earths shortages, and Zara owner Inditex missing first-quarter sales expectations. Even the advertising sector is bracing for impact, with WPP cutting its 2025 global ad revenue growth forecast due to trade fears. While some domestic industries such as U.S. aluminum producers have benefited from rising prices, the broader economic sentiment reflects caution. Japan's government warned of tariffs threatening its economic growth, and a former Bank of Japan policymaker suggested tariffs may have ended the BOJ's rate hike cycle. Despite these concerns, the Treasury Department reported a decrease in the U.S. monthly budget deficit by over $30 billion, largely attributable to increased customs receipts from tariffs. A recent federal appeals court decision also provided a temporary win for the administration, allowing Trump's sweeping tariffs to remain in effect, overturning an earlier ruling that deemed their enactment unlawful. Beyond trade, the administration is also exploring novel approaches to immigration and investment. President Trump has launched a website for a controversial initiative offering a $5 million gold card that would grant U.S. residency, signaling another avenue for attracting foreign capital and talent under specific conditions. As the July 9 tariff deadline approaches and the U.S. China trade framework awaits final approval, the world watches to see how these high-stakes negotiations and policy pronouncements will solidify. The coming weeks will be critical in determining whether the recent diplomatic overtures translate into sustained economic stability, or if the underlying tensions, both personal and geopolitical, will once again push the global economy into uncharted waters. The interplay of powerful personalities and sweeping economic policies continues to define a period of unprecedented fluidity, demanding close attention from markets, industries, and international observers alike. The often unpredictable intersection of technology, politics, and public opinion has once again taken center stage this week, marked by a dramatic public feud and subsequent rapprochement between two of the world's most influential figures, President Donald Trump and tech titan Elon Musk. What began as sharp personal attacks across social media and in interviews escalated quickly, only to be followed by a diplomatic dance hinting at a potential reconciliation, all while the administration pushes forward with a sweeping legislative agenda touching everything from environmental policy to higher education. The public spat erupted last Thursday, with Musk 53 launching a series of social media broadsides against President Trump. These included a claim that Trump would not have secured the 2024 election without his assistance, and a particularly incendiary suggestion that the president was obstructing the release of files related to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein due to past associations. President Trump, never one to shy from confrontation, quickly retaliated, accusing Musk of suffering from Trump derangement syndrome and being crazy, even threatening to review and potentially revoke federal government contracts held by Musk's companies, most notably SpaceX. The president also expressed his disappointment, telling the Post's Miranda Devine on Monday that while he held no hard feelings, he was a little disappointed by the blow-up, which he traced to Musk's criticisms of the administration's One Big Beautiful Bill. Behind the scenes, however, efforts were already underway to mend the fractured relationship. Sources familiar with the discussions reveal that Vice President J.D. Vance and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles held a crucial phone call with Musk on Friday to discuss the path to a truce. This diplomatic outreach culminated in Musk's private phone call to President Trump late Monday night. A significant gesture that preceded his public apology on X. I regret some of my posts about President at real Donald Trump last week. They went too far, Musk posted early Wednesday, notably after deleting his previous post about the Epstein files. President Trump, responding to the post, acknowledged the apology is very nice, though he remained non-committal about fully burying the hatchet, telling reporters, "I really haven't thought too much about it." The underlying cause of Musk's initial outburst, according to sources close to him, stemmed from his frustration over President Trump's decision to withdraw the nomination of Jared Isaacman, a close Musk associate, to lead NASA, a move that was seen as a humiliating turn for the tech billionaire. The stakes for both men are considerable. Trump's administration holds billions in federal contracts with SpaceX, while Musk is a significant donor in Republican politics, having reportedly pledged an additional $100 million to Trump's outside groups for the 2026 midterm elections. Furthermore, Musk's intimate knowledge of the administration's inner workings makes him a potentially problematic adversary, a scenario Trump is keen to avoid given past experiences with disgruntled former aides. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which initially sparked Musk's criticism, continues to be a central pillar of the Trump administration's domestic agenda, driving a host of policy shifts. One key component of the bill aims to penalize colleges and universities whose students accumulate significant loan debt without sufficient post-graduation earnings. This proposal, estimated by the Congressional Budget Office to save the government over $6 billion in the next decade, would require colleges to reimburse the federal government for a portion of unpaid debt. While experts acknowledge the need for accountability in higher education, concerns about the extensive data collection required have been raised. The bill also features prominently in broader efforts to reduce government spending, with the House set to vote on legislation that would claw back $9.4 billion in previously approved funds targeting programs like the U.S. Agency for International Development, Public Broadcasting Service, and National Public Radio, all under the banner of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, a department Musk himself once advised. Beyond the legislative sphere, the administration is also moving to significantly roll back environmental regulations. The Environmental Protection Agency (EPA) plans to repeal limits on greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel-fired power plants, arguing that U.S. power plants constitute a mere 3% of global emissions. Critics, however, vehemently disagree, with Meredith Hankins, an attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council, stating that if U.S. power plants were a country, they would be the sixth largest contributor to global climate pollution. This move, which some see as propping up the coal industry, comes as Americans face increasing climate-related impacts like intense storms, flooding, and wildfires. In a related action, President Trump is expected to sign measures blocking California's ambitious plan to phase out gas-powered cars by 2035 and to do away with regulations aimed at reducing diesel vehicle and truck emissions, further underscoring a clear divergence from climate-conscious policies. Amidst these policy shifts, public opinion remains a complex and often contradictory landscape. Recent polls on Trump's immigration policies, for instance, present a mixed message. A CBS poll shows 54% approval for his deportation approach, while a Quinnipiac poll indicates 56% disapproval. This unpredictability suggests a significant portion of the public remains open to persuasion, as NPR's Domenico Montanaro points out, highlighting the nuanced distinction between hardened criminals and hard-working community members in the public's perception. The administration's actions are not without internal dissent either, as evidenced by Senator Rand Paul's temporary disinvitation from a White House picnic due to his opposition to the Big Beautiful Bill over concerns about the federal deficit. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice has made an highly unusual and concerning request for extensive 2024 election data from Colorado, alongside a demand to preserve 2020 records, raising eyebrows among voting experts given President Trump's past rhetoric on election integrity. The administration's broader push to reshape elite universities also continues, marked by the cancellation of $11 billion in research funding, threats to Harvard's tax-exempt status, and proposals to increase endowment taxes, tactics that have already prompted a lawsuit from Harvard University. As the dust settles on the latest high-profile tech political drama, The path forward for the Musk-Trump relationship remains uncertain, poised between a tentative truce and the potential for renewed friction. The One Big Beautiful Bill continues its journey through Congress, shaping the nation's economic, environmental, and educational landscape. The interplay between powerful individuals' ambitious legislative agendas and a divided public will undoubtedly continue to define the current political climate, with technology often serving as both a platform for conflict and a target of policy, underscoring the dynamic and interconnected nature of these forces. The American economic and societal landscape, once a beacon of innovation and stability, is currently undergoing a radical transformation, prompting widespread concern among economists, policymakers, and citizens alike. What many observers had predicted as a challenging second term for the current administration has rapidly escalated into a full-blown crisis characterized by unprecedented economic policies, a systematic dismantling of government functions, and a chilling assault on scientific and intellectual endeavor. This great dismantling, as some are calling it, has swiftly undermined the nation's strengths, raising profound questions about its future trajectory. Just months prior, the United States, despite a prevailing sour mood largely attributed to post-COVID inflation, stood in a remarkably strong position. As noted by The Economist, the U.S. economy in the 21st century had become the envy of the world, boasting superior productivity and per capita income growth compared to other wealthy nations. European leaders like former ECB President Mario Draghi had even urged efforts to narrow the growing dominance of U.S. companies in advanced technology, a gap often linked to America's robust scientific community and superb higher education system. Beyond economics, non-economic indicators also painted a positive picture. Crime rates after a COVID-era bump had receded, with homicide rates in 2024 near their lowest in 65 years. While challenges like extreme income inequality, high deaths of despair, and lagging life expectancy persisted, the nation inherited by the current administration was in many fundamental ways thriving. However, the new administration swiftly moved to fix this. The economic agenda, dubbed MAGAnomics, has been met with severe criticism from most economists. Three particular proposals raised alarms: massive tariff increases, large-scale deportations, and the politicization of the Federal Reserve. While deportations have been brutal but not yet numerically overwhelming, and direct control over the Fed has been resisted, the tariffs have materialized with an intensity far exceeding initial predictions. On April 2, a day controversially dubbed Liberation Day, the administration imposed sweeping tariffs on global trade partners, including a staggering 145% on imports from China, later provisionally reduced to 30%. This has driven the average U.S. tariff rate to 17.4%, the highest level since 1934. Nearing the infamous Smoot-Hawley tariff era. The economic damage from these tariffs is already proving substantial. West Coast ports are reporting a sharp drop in ships from Asia, with reports indicating no container ships currently departing China for America. This collapse in trade is expected to lead to soaring prices, empty shelves, widespread layoffs, and bankruptcies among businesses reliant on international supply chains, including trucking and retail. Beyond direct impacts, the administration's erratic tariff policy, imposing huge tariffs globally then pausing them for 90 days only to replace them with equally extreme but different rates, has created immense uncertainty. Businesses faced with the unpredictability of future trade policy are adopting a wait-and-see approach, hoarding cash rather than investing. This environment is fostering a significant risk of stagflation, rising prices and shortages due to import cuts, coupled with rising unemployment as policy instability deters spending. As one prominent economist, Paul Krugman, succinctly put it, all of this chaos is on Trump's head. The economy would be doing fine if he had left it alone. The tariffs are reverberating globally. The UK economy, for instance, sharply contracted by 0.3% in April, marking the largest monthly fall on record in goods exports to the US due to the introduction of a 10% reciprocal tariff. Japan's economy and its central bank's rate hike cycle are also being impacted, while the World Bank has slashed its global growth forecast for 2025 by 0.4 percentage points to 2.3%, citing high tariffs and uncertainty as significant headwinds. Domestically, the dollar has hit a fresh 2025 low, reflecting investor loss of faith in U.S. credibility. While a recent federal appeals court decision has allowed Trump's sweeping tariffs to temporarily remain in effect, their legality continues to be challenged, and the administration has indicated it will set unilateral tariff rates within weeks, further muddying the waters. Despite a temporary truce with China easing some tensions over rare earth minerals and student visas, the core issues of trade imbalance and strategic leverage remain. Compounding the economic woes is a radical fiscal agenda and a systematic assault on the government's operational capacity. The budget bill passed by the House in May is described as incredibly extreme, proposing nearly $700 billion in cuts to Medicaid and almost $300 billion from SNAP food stamps. These cuts are projected to deny healthcare to millions and lead to widespread hunger, reducing the purchasing power of lower-income households by an estimated 4% or more. Yet despite these savage cuts at the bottom, substantial tax cuts for the wealthy are expected to add a staggering $3.8 trillion to the deficit, leading to soaring long-term interest rates on U.S. debt and a plunging dollar, signaling investor concern over U.S. solvency. Beyond the budget, the administration's creation of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency (DOGE) has introduced chaos rather than savings. Critics note that DOGE's receipts for purported savings are riddled with accounting errors and amount to a tiny fraction of claimed sums. Instead, DOGE has led to arbitrary firings of crucial government workers, leaving agencies like Social Security fraying at the seams, with beneficiaries struggling to receive promised aid. This systematic degradation of the federal government, largely staffed by dedicated civil servants, is seen as destroying a valuable public asset, with much of the damage potentially irreversible as experienced professionals leave and fewer young people consider public service. Perhaps most alarming is what is being termed the war on knowledge. The administration's 2026 budget proposal seeks to cut funding for the National Institutes of Health by 40% and the National Science Foundation by over half. More immediately, the NSF has halted all funding actions and the NIH is ghosting grantees, failing to disburse promised funds. This financial assault is coupled with a push to shut down any research deemed woke or touching on DEI, extending to studies on climate change or vaccine efficacy. This frontal assault on intellectual inquiry threatens America's global leadership in science and research, potentially driving away leading scientists and talented foreign students and raising fears that the American century may well be over in scientific terms. A peculiar yet significant development has been the administration's embrace and exploitation of cryptocurrency. While Bitcoin, a 2008 invention, has largely failed to find a legitimate economic role, stablecoins like Tether have become instrumental in criminal activities such as blackmail and extortion. More recently, useless Dollar Trump and Dollar Melania coins have reportedly been used to transfer billions to the president and his family, allegedly in return for influence, drawing comparisons to the corruption of the Gilded Age. The underlying motive behind this sweeping devastation, as analyzed by some, extends beyond mere oligarchic greed. While there is clearly an element of government buy-in for billionaires seeking tax cuts and privatization, it doesn't fully explain policies like the trade war, which harms nearly everyone, or the assault on science. Instead, a compelling argument points to the triumph of resentment. Powerful figures within the administration, despite their wealth and influence, appear driven by deep-seated anger and insecurity. This resentment, stemming from perceived slights or a failure of privilege to deliver expected fulfillment, seems to shape policies, tariffs to spite economists, government dismantling to prove genius, and attacks on medical research to silence contradictory voices. While the current trajectory paints a grim picture, many maintain faith in America's long-term resilience, believing that this reign will eventually end. However, the profound and multifaceted damage being inflicted on the economy, governance, and intellectual foundations of the nation is undeniable. The path to full recovery, if ever achieved, is widely expected to be a long and arduous one, potentially spanning decades. The coming months will undoubtedly reveal the full extent of these impacts, shaping not just America's future but the global economic and geopolitical landscape for years to come. In a dramatic escalation of federal-state tensions, the United States finds itself grappling with an unprecedented deployment of military forces within its own borders as President Donald Trump's administration faces a burgeoning legal and political firestorm over its decision to federalize the National Guard and dispatch Marines to Los Angeles amidst escalating immigration protests. The move, initiated without the consent of California Governor Gavin Newsom, has ignited a fierce debate over executive authority, states' rights, and the very role of the military in domestic affairs, with critics openly warning of a slide towards authoritarianism. The controversy centers on the Trump administration's response to demonstrations against immigration and customs enforcement (ICE) operations, which have spread from Los Angeles to major cities including New York City, San Francisco, Boston, and Austin. Governor Newsom has vehemently accused President Trump of violating the U.S. Constitution and federal law, asserting that the president is turning the military into his own personal police force against American citizens. In an address to Californians, Newsom stated Trump is pulling a military dragnet across LA well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. The governor's office has presented evidence, including past statements from President Trump himself in 2020 regarding protests in Portland, where he affirmed, "We can't call in the National Guard unless we are requested by a governor." Similarly, then Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem in 2024 had warned that federalizing the National Guard without gubernatorial consent would be a direct attack on states' rights. These prior declarations stand in stark contrast to the administration's current actions. Governor Newsom has filed an emergency motion to block the deployment, arguing that it unlawfully trampled over California's sovereignty. The state's lawsuit contends that the president's invocation of Title 10 authority, specifically Section 12406 of the U.S. Code, requires gubernatorial approval, which Newsom explicitly stated was not given. Furthermore, California officials maintain that the situation in Los Angeles did not meet the legal criteria for federalization, such as an invasion or widespread rebellion, as local and state law enforcement had the situation under control. Indeed, by the time federalized troops arrived, many protests had already dissipated, leading critics to suggest the military presence actually inflamed the situation and led to larger crowds and more problems for law enforcement. The scale of the deployment has drawn significant attention and concern. President Trump has redirected approximately 4,800 activated Guards and Marines to Los Angeles, a number that remarkably surpasses the total U.S. soldiers currently stationed in Iraq and Syria combined. This substantial commitment of resources has also come with a hefty price tag. Secretary Pete Hegseth of the Department of Defense openly admitted that the administration is spending roughly $134 million on travel, lodging, and training for these soldiers, despite the governor's assertion that they are not needed in Los Angeles at this time. Beyond the financial inefficiency, the federalization of the California National Guard has deprived the state of critical resources, including personnel involved in drug interdiction at the border and emergency responders vital for natural disasters such as the January 2025 firestorm in Los Angeles, which the CalGuard previously addressed. The president's actions extend beyond California, with his June 7 memorandum purporting to authorize the Department of Defense to call up to 000 National Guard personnel into federal service nationwide, declaring a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. This order, not specific to California, suggests a broader intent to commandeer state militias, putting every state at risk, as the governor's office noted. The move has been widely interpreted by legal and military experts as an unprecedented bending of the military's role. Corey Sheikh, a former defense official and director of foreign and defense policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute, voiced concern over the normalization of political involvement by troops and novel and expansive interpretations of executive power. Stephen I Vladek, a Georgetown University law professor, highlighted President Trump's expansive definitions of what qualifies as an emergency, arguing there is really no history of using those authorities for what really are partisan political purposes, more than they are public safety restoration purposes. The motivations behind the deployment are overtly political. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that President Trump promised to carry out the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, and left-wing riots will not deter him in that effort. The president has not shied away from escalating rhetoric, even endorsing the idea of arresting Governor Newsom, stating, "I would do it if I were Tom," referring to his border czar Tom Homan. President Trump has also signaled that the Los Angeles deployment could be the first, perhaps of many, threatening that protests in other cities would be met with equal or greater force. He has repeatedly referred to protesters as insurrectionists and indicated he is considering invoking the Insurrection Act, an 1807 law historically used in instances of Civil War armed rebellion or widespread deadly riots, a stark contrast to the current situation in Los Angeles. Public opinion on the matter remains divided. A poll from The Washington Post and George Mason University found Americans largely split on supporting the Los Angeles protests and the president's decision to send troops. However, Californians themselves are significantly more supportive of the protests and overwhelmingly opposed to the federal deployment. Retired Lieutenant General Russell L. Honoré commented that he sees the Los Angeles actions as a precursor to what he wants to do elsewhere around the country, suggesting a political objective to this and an attempt to set the conditions and see how far he could go. As the legal battle unfolds with a hearing for Newsom's emergency motion set for Thursday, the nation watches closely. This episode marks a critical juncture in the ongoing debate over federalism, executive power, and the delicate balance of civilian-military relations. The long-term implications for democratic norms and the potential for increased militarization of domestic law enforcement remain a profound concern, suggesting that the current tensions in California may well be a harbinger of future confrontations over the scope of presidential authority. The global landscape is currently marked by a potent confluence of geopolitical volatility, significant diplomatic shifts, and a major industrial tragedy, painting a picture of profound uncertainty across international relations and key industries. From escalating tensions in the Middle East to a devastating aviation disaster, recent developments underscore a period of heightened fragility and rapid change. Amidst rising tensions with Iran, the United States has initiated the evacuation of non-military personnel from several Middle Eastern nations, including embassy staff in Iraq, Bahrain, and Kuwait. President Donald Trump confirmed the move, stating, "They are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place and we'll see what happens." The State Department elaborated, emphasizing that the decision reflects a constant assessment of personnel posture to ensure American safety abroad, leading to a reduction in mission staff in Baghdad. While American and Iraqi sources confirmed the evacuations, the specific security risks prompting the move remain undisclosed, with an unnamed Iraqi government official noting that their side had not recorded any security indicator that requires this evacuation, suggesting a broader precautionary measure across multiple U.S. diplomatic presences in the region. The U.S. Central Command, which oversees military activity in the Middle East, also authorized the voluntary departure of military dependents, underscoring a region-wide concern as it monitors developing tension and works to maintain a constant state of readiness. This strategic withdrawal comes as negotiations between the U.S. and Iran over a potential nuclear deal appear to have stalled, with President Trump expressing growing less confident about reaching an agreement. The stakes are acutely high, with Trump reiterating, "They can't have a nuclear weapon, we're not going to allow that." The situation is further complicated by reports that Israel is preparing for potential strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, while Iran's Defense Minister Aziz Naserzadeh warned of retaliatory strikes on U.S. military bases if talks fail. Daniel Shapiro, former U.S. ambassador to Israel, suggested that these U.S. preparations might serve as leverage in the upcoming nuclear talks scheduled for Sunday in Oman's capital Muscat, stating, "It does not necessarily mean anything is imminent, But it shows it is possible, and the United States wants to reduce risk. That can be useful leverage in the talks. The heightened alert has also prompted the UK Maritime Trade Agency to issue an advisory cautioning commercial vessels about increased tensions and potential escalation of military activity in the region. Iran, for its part, maintains it is not seeking a nuclear weapon, with its UN mission asserting that threats of overwhelming force won't change facts. Beyond the Middle East, the diplomatic landscape remains turbulent. The impending departure of President Trump's top Africa diplomat, as reported by Semaphore Signals, further shifts within the administration's foreign policy apparatus. Meanwhile, the complex relationship with Russia continues to draw scrutiny, exemplified by Senator Marco Rubio's controversial congratulation to Russians on Russia Day. An act that Euromaidan press termed Trump diplomacy's new low amidst the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. This comes as experts such as Mykola Bieliskov warn against a rushed ceasefire in the Russo-Ukrainian war, without first weakening Moscow, arguing that such a move would only enable Russia's strategy to systematically destabilize Ukraine. Adding to the geopolitical tightrope walk the question of whether a potential second Trump administration will choose deal or discord with China looms large, highlighting the pervasive strategic uncertainty across major global powers. Compounding these geopolitical anxieties, the aviation industry was rocked by a tragic incident in India. An Air India Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner en route to London Gatwick Airport with 242 passengers, most of them Indian or British nationals, crashed in Ahmedabad moments after takeoff. An Indian health official confirmed many people had died. And eyewitness accounts described huge volumes of black smoke rising from the wreckage. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called the disaster heartbreaking beyond words, while UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer described the images as devastating. The crash has immediate and severe implications for Boeing, whose shares dropped 7% following the news. This latest incident places renewed pressure on the aircraft manufacturer, which has been vigorously working to restore confidence in the safety of its planes after several fatal crashes in recent years, a challenge now made even more arduous. As the U.S. navigates complex diplomatic maneuvers in the Middle East and beyond, and a major aviation manufacturer grapples with another devastating incident, the coming weeks will be critical. The outcome of nuclear negotiations with Iran, the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy amid a shifting diplomatic core. And Boeing's response to the latest crash will undoubtedly shape the immediate future of global stability and the technology sectors underpinning it. The world watches closely as these interconnected narratives unfold, each carrying significant implications for peace, economic stability, and public confidence.